We are members of the Armenian Church, and we believe in the faith of our forefathers. But we also act on that faith. Fasting, personal reflection, meditation and contemplation, prayer, reading Holy Scripture, worshiping together and participating in the sacraments. These are spiritual practices of the Armenian Church. Hello, and welcome to this special bonus episode of Spiritual Practices. Our first episode went great, and I was so happy that so many of you joined us as we started to explore all of the various spiritual practices of the Armenian Church. The first topic that we covered was fasting. Now, my hope for this series and for that episode too was that we would be able to cover all of the essential aspects of fasting in a brief period of time, about 20 minutes or so. And the episode went on to about 40 minutes, and there were still things that I wasn't able to discuss. And some of you picked up on that, and I received several questions after the episode. Now, I was planning on answering those questions during the next episode, this upcoming Tuesday, when we're going to be talking about personal reflection. But in order to keep that episode brief, I want to respond to those questions now. And I think that they're important questions too, so I'm excited to have the opportunity to do it. I received questions about health and fasting, and this is a very important topic and something I had intended to cover in the first episode. When we talked about exemptions that are made for fasting, certainly health is first and foremost a concern on everybody's mind. Even during the strictest periods of fasting, that is, like throughout history, when people were observing fasts in the most strict sense, sometimes there were even societal laws put into place that required Christian men and women to fast. Even those laws took into account the health of the person. They would require that that person be healthy in order to fast. So if for any reason, because of your health, perhaps medication that you're taking, perhaps you're diabetic, perhaps you simply are ill and you need to eat protein, or you need to avoid, a vegan diet so that you can get better, by all means do not engage in the physical aspect of the fast. There are still other aspects of the fast that you can participate in. Those things we discussed, the mental fast, the spiritual fast, those things are equally important. I remember during seminary, when I was living in Armenia, during the period of Great Lent, I had come down with a pretty serious pneumonia. And I was keeping my fast as I had been, and it got pretty bad. So the rector asked me to go see the doctor of the seminary. And I went in and I saw him, and he tested me out, and he said, "Yeah, you've got a pneumonia. And you got to get better. I'm going to prescribe you some antibiotics, and you got to rest." And, he said, "You have to watch your diet, you have to eat healthy." And I said, "Well, I am, of course, keeping my fast because it's Lent." And he said, "You know what? I respect that, but you're an idiot." And I laughed. And he said, God certainly wants you to participate in the fast, but he doesn't want you to get sick and die at the same time. And I understood that he was right at that moment, and I stopped fasting so that I would get better. In fact, we went out and I think we had kufte or something that evening. So if you're not feeling well, please don't risk your health by fasting. That's not the intention of the fast. And I'm sure that when we talked about the intention of fasting in the previous episode, you probably picked up on that. One of the other questions that was raised was with regard to, the dieting aspect of fasting versus, the spiritual aspect of fasting. There are many people today who are vegetarians and are vegans for personal reasons. Do these efforts overlap? Well, fasting isn't a form of dieting. And it's because of all of the, intrinsic aspects of fasting that involve highlighting, ways in our life that we can change that probably make it different than a diet. As Archbishop Shneur Kalustian said, he said that we know that the weeds grow with the wheat, And the weeds have value for sure because, they can feed the cattle and they can be used for compost. But nobody grows wheat so that they could collect the weeds. So that is to say, physically, you're going to be healthier. You're going to lose weight if you fast. But that's not why we do it. But it is a secondary benefit, of course. And I also want to point out that because vegetarian and vegan diets have become so prominent, it's really easy to have access to really great vegan food. If I open up an app on my phone right now, I bet you I could find something that will, within 15 minutes, show up at my door and be a delicious vegan meal. Well, this is great. But sometimes the extravagance of vegan foods that are available today, they kind of defeat the purpose of the fast. I'll give you an example. I was in Los Angeles about a week ago, and I stopped off at a little cafe, and they had a chocolate vegan cake in the display. Somebody walked in and they said, "Oh, it's a chocolate vegan cake. What's in it?" And the proprietor said, "Well, there's cocoa, and there's flour, and there's a whole lot of oil. It's like 90% oil," the guy said. He was joking, but the point being that it was extremely rich. Well, having that sort of a chocolate cake, in a way that's, yes, it agrees with vegan parameters of fasting, but it defeats the purpose because of its rich nature, because of its extravagance. It's certainly not physically healthy for you, and I don't think that it agrees with the intention of fasting. Another question that was asked was about the things that we should be doing during Lent. So, when we talk about fasting, we're talking about a form of abstinence. We're talking about disciplining ourselves and making choices to remove certain things from our life and not do certain things. But of course, we know that an important aspect of Lent are the positive things that we do as well. That is to say, charitable service. That is to say, going out of our way to help others, to help the poor, maybe to find people in our own lives and social circles that are lonely, that need support, and giving them that extra support that they need. That aspect of the Lenten experience is very important. So I don't want you to think that Lent is only about abstinence. Lent is only about creating a very sparse environment in our lives and denying ourselves things. No. However, the spiritual practices that I've chosen to focus on in this series are spiritual practices that are intended to put the spotlight on yourself and on your inner life, so that you can work to put those things in order. They're powerful spiritual tools so that through I think, proper execution and effective use of these tools, you can become more like the person that God intended you to be. And it's a slow process like we talked about before. There are other spiritual practices like charitable service and like service to the poor that are very important, and we're simply not directly speaking about those in this series. But I think that you'll find that as you go about the process of putting yourself to rights in a spiritual sense, you begin to enable yourself to become more proactive in good works in this world. When you find yourself less preoccupied with your internal strife, you are able to focus better and have more compassion on the world around you. So in that way, these spiritual practices can be beneficial in enabling us to serve the world that we're a part of and to do good works. And we will address that indirectly and sometimes directly in the episodes to come. I hope that this special bonus episode answered some of the questions that you might have had from our last episode. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 7:30 to talk about personal reflection. God bless all of you, and I pray that the Lord grant you strength, patience, and ability during this great Lenten season. Thank you.